So Sharon, so let's assume you use bevacizumab like it says, and if you have a wild type and you respond, then you get Paula or bevacizumab alone. And again, then it goes back to the same F sub note that says, you know, HRD might be helpful. So I think you like that. You agree with that? Is that you like that?
I think Tom summed it up, you know, very nicely, that there are definitely different decision points in ovarian cancer, and so one decision doesn't really, it does dictate the other. I mean,
Right.
whether or not to use Avastin is sort of irrespective of biomarkers in some people's mind. But I think I do believe in the biomarker. I know there are a lot of, it's not a perfect test. It would be nice to actually see the score if you are using my choice HRD, but I do think that data does influence, you know, my personal recommendations for maintenance once I have that information.
Yeah, thank you for that. So then if you have bevacizumab started and you have a BRCA mutation, then category 1, interestingly, Katie Moore, category 1 is not to stop the bevacizumab. Category 1 is bevacizumab plus olaparib. What do you think about if you have bevacizumab going and you have a PR/CR? Should stopping the bevacizumab be considered, or should you just add olaparib onto it, which is what the NCCN says?
Yeah, that's another fantastic question we don't have clinical trial data for. But that was one of the big problems with the olaparib indication in the first place, is because SOLO-1 did not allow bevacizumab, which was a big problem in many parts of Europe when we ran the study, where it is the standard of care in frontline. And so people would finish their 6 cycles with bevacizumab and then stop the bevacizumab so they could go on to olaparib. Does that really make sense? So this allows you, to do both. So quite frankly, I actually like it. There was at SGO, as you know, Dr. Vergote presented purely hypothesis generating. So I'm not at all falling on the sword that this is the thing, but it was a modeled comparison of Paula-1 and SOLO-1. So it was a propensity weighted analysis where they pulled the patients with BRCA associated cancers out of Paula-1 and then matched them on key prognostic endpoints, since they did a weighting so that the patients looked similar in 2 groups. And then they did this series of comparisons, and I just have it up on the screen so I can not give false information. But they did a comparison of olaparib versus olaparib plus bevacizumab. So what's the benefit of the bevacizumab? And the hazard ratio was 0.71. So there did, by this mathematical experiment, appear to be at least an additive, and probably only an additive, benefit to both. But that's okay. It was a little bit better. I think it would be nice to prove this in a real prospective clinical trial, but I doubt we ever do that. But the hazard ratio is 0.71. And some earlier points that people brought up, and these are only in patients with BRCA mutations. They compared olaparib to bevacizumab, and the hazard ratio in favor of olaparib was 0.48, because there's still a group of people that think bevacizumab and olaparib are similar. They are not in a BRCA-associated cancer. And then they compared Bev versus placebo in these 2 populations, because there's a group of people who believe that these patients are cured and don't need any maintenance, and the hazard ratio was 0.65 in favor of the bevacizumab, so at least Bev. And so they did a whole bunch of these analyses, but probably the most interesting of them is this olaparib Bev versus olaparib that would suggest an additive benefit. So you're certainly not harming people, I don't believe. You have to definitely watch the safety profile if you're adding another active agent with toxicities. But if you're going to start bevacizumab, I mean, honestly, I would keep it going and add the olaparib in that population.
Now, thank you for that. Now, Tom Herzog, so interesting in the guidelines, in the NCCN guidelines, that if you start bevacizumab and you have a BRCA mutation, they give you the opportunity to add niraparib to bevacizumab. And obviously that would not be prospectively tested in a informative way. But there was a study that looked at that here at the SGO. I think the study's called Vario. Is that right, Tom?
Yes, the Vario trial. And let me present the Vario trial real quickly, and then I wanted to ask Katie a question. Well, let me ask you now since we're talking. So what are you going to do for your next germline or somatic mutated patient that you would normally follow solo one? Would you add Bev?
Well, to our earlier point, I think the decision for Bev is made much earlier, often before I know the germline status of the patient. So I've made the decision to use bevacizumab because they have a lot of ascites or bulky disease. That would be my sort of practice, and I'm trying to get a faster, deeper response because I'm trying to get them out of trouble. And then I get the germline response, and in the past, I would have to stop the bevacizumab at the end of chemo, which we all know from a PFS standpoint that's not how the drug is supposed to benefit. Certainly I got the response benefit. So now I would leave them on bevacizumab and just layer.
So the answer is yes. If you had previously put them on Bev, you would leave.
I'd keep it going.
Got it. Great.
I would.
So let me just do the Vario trial real quick, because this is really interesting, in terms of the NCCN saying basically, right, Brad, that you can substitute these. And we do have some data on niraparib with Bev in advanced ovarian cancer, looking at stage 3-4. Remember, this data that was presented by Hardesty is a straight phase 2, 105 patients. And the primary endpoint is a landmark analysis of how many are progression-free at 18 months. So we have the preliminary data from 6 months, which was really impressive. About 90% were progression-free. And then the 12 months data came out in the actual presentation, and it's 75%. A little bit higher in those that had HRD, 88% versus HR proficient, where it goes down to 66%. Discontinuation rate was 25%, which is not a lot different than what we saw in Palo 1, which was, I think, about 20%, somewhere in there.